Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We're so excited you're here. My name is Katie Kapka. I am the inbound marketing manager at Caspian, and my team helps produce these webinars. I'm so excited to welcome you. Chances are, if you're here, you're an electronics brand, and if you're not, you still have a ton to learn about the industry and about launching on Amazon or optimizing your brand on Amazon. I will just be moderating the Q&A, but I am excited to pass it off to one of my hosts, Adam Palmer with Caspian. So welcome, Adam, and good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for, having me here. This will be a fun kind of conversation. Again, my name is Adam Palmer. I am the Director of Business Development here at Caspian. I've been working on the Amazon channel for almost 7 years now, and much of that has been focused on the consumer electronics industry. In fact, CES was the first show I ever went to, and have gone to it almost every year since I started at Caspian, hitting about 5 years, which I always get a kick out of, because whenever I tell someone at CES about that, they usually tell me that it's about 4x below what it needs to be impressive to most of those people. Which kind of leads me to my partner in crime today, Ed Anderson, the president of Levin Consulting, who I'm sure could beat that number by a long shot. Hi, Ed.
Hey, Adam. You are correct. I can. Although we've got folks in our team that crush me, including our founder Adam Levin, who's been going since it was in Chicago.
Oh wow!
Which was a long time ago. But yes, we've been to many CESs.
Yeah, and we'll talk about our companies a little more in just a second, but Ed and I work together and have worked together for the last couple of years to really help brands in the electronics industry really look at the channel as a whole, both online, on the marketplace, and offline, and offer that expertise regardless what a brand is trying to do. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, and well, I'll talk more once we get to.
Yeah, absolutely. So Caspian's been around for about 12 years now, going on 13 actually. We originally founded as a third-party seller, but realized that the channel could be so much more than just retail. So we really pivoted what our focuses were towards relationship-based opportunities and building brand equity and growing market share over the long term, instead of what a lot of the retailers did back then and still do now, where that retail arbitrage and really that race to zero. We more focus on helping brands kind of grow exponentially and really become a power player in the space. And then fast forward to 2020, we actually rebranded as Caspian from our former name eTails to help kind of show that the evolution of that mentality and really show that we're no longer just a retailer, but also we use those best practices, the softwares we've developed, and our overall manpower to help brands represent themselves through our agency program, or even help their own teams through software development and even consulting a little bit, to help kind of scale them to infinity, regardless of what they're looking to do. And I won't say our mission statement verbatim, but we really look to empower brands to grow and grow to infinity.
Okay. So and I'll take over. So Levin Consulting has been around for over 30 years, and we have been working in the consumer and SMB channel space, providing strategies for a whole range of different technology products and other types of consumer products for that time. And we have worked on the earliest stage startups all the way to the largest companies in our industry, and honestly everything in between. And that's in North America, in Europe, and in Asia. Our mission really has never changed. It's been the same from day one when I walked in back in the 90s. Which is, we're dedicated to the profitable sell-through of technology products. We believe in getting your products where customers expect to buy it, and figuring out the right ways to make sure that those products are sold through. That philosophy guides us on every project we do. And we like to think that we really know the industry, we know the channel, and we live and breathe the channel. We're really excited, frankly, to be working with and partnering with Caspian. I think there's a great complementary fit here in terms of the types of services we provide, and working with them to be able to provide really a full service omni-channel package, from high-level strategy down to the day-to-day data-driven e-commerce management, and all the tools that they have. So we're thrilled to be kicking it off with this webinar, and as I said, we're really excited to be working with them.
Yeah, I think you said it best, is when you were talking about that you guys really focus on helping brands where the customer is and where the customer is going, and as that, and what we'll talk about today, I guess, is as that trends more towards e-commerce and towards those marketplaces, this for us as well becomes a very complementary partnership that we're extremely excited about, because as we evolve too, we are looking and continuing to grow towards being able to offer brands more of a specialty look, where you guys really have that opportunity for us, as well as really being able to offer us that ability to not only say, hey, this is what's going to work on the channel, but this is going to what's going to work for the industry as well. So very excited about this partnership as well.
All right.
Topics today. So we're gonna definitely dive into the industry landscape, what it kind of looked like through 2020, and how it got there, the consumer behavior, what changed with consumers, how they really impacted what the industry ended up doing as far as those pieces and the numbers go, as well as the year as a whole, how that impact the markets, and then from there we'll kind of take that information and really look at 2020 or 2021 and kind of talk about the thoughts, concerns, and strategies going forward. And then of course a live Q&A, and Katie will be on the whole time too. So if anyone who is attending this, feel free to ask questions throughout, and she will kind of be your voice during these. So feel free to ask during the specific subjects, or even towards the end, and we'll be happy to answer those questions.
Okay, so I will kick it off here. Obviously, 2020 was a very different year. It was a very challenging year, and certainly from the consumer technology perspective, we saw a massive shift in how products are purchased, in consumer behavior, and ultimately then in which accounts and which channels are really dominating, and it's clearly online. That was a trend that was happening, but 2020 just accelerated it tremendously. So you see 60% of total technology sales for consumer products online in 2020. That number actually peaked at 69% during Q2. These are NPD numbers, by the way. And then within that, what you saw was also a tremendous growth in BOPIS, the buy online, pick up in store. And so I want everyone to really take a second and let all of that sink in. The industry has completely shifted to online. And obviously, I think for most of us, we were probably at various stages of being accustomed to purchasing online, accustomed to selling online, and being aware of it. But think about all the people that you may know who really didn't buy online before 2020. They were forced into a new behavior through both online purchasing and then online ordering, buy online, pick up in store, and they got used to it. And so we really don't see this trend going back. We fully expect that 2/3 of the business going forward will be online and will continue to be online. We also expect that for the retailers that get it right, the BOPIS trend will continue to be not only a very strong way for them to thrive in the environment, but also a key factor in driving some of the decisions they make in terms of their in-store merchandising, what they do with their space, and ultimately how they market products and how they drive traffic to themselves.
Ed, quick question for you. Do you define curbside pickup as part of that, or is this truly like a customer is going into the store and purchasing or picking up the product within the store, or is that kind of included in that overall?
It's a great question, and yes, we do include curbside pickup in that.
Gotcha.
And so clearly there was a period of time where that, for most of the retailers, that was the only thing they could do. And again, that drove a lot of sales because you have customers, especially the customers that wanted or needed product the same day. That's the way to do it.
Absolutely.
And that's what they did. They get accustomed to that behavior, and it starts driving habits that become long-term habits.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the average amount of time it takes to build a habit is like 21 days, and we've been doing this for almost a year. So absolutely, I completely agree. That the habits have been formed, and they'll definitely continue to grow.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we can keep going, I think. So, you look at who the players are, and then it's really no surprise here at the top. Amazon was already dominant going in, clear number one in terms of online, and really number one overall in terms of selling consumer technology products. And then 2020 happened and really just poured gas on that fire. That is going to continue. Where I think we see, big shift is in the growth of some of the other players as well. Obviously, Amazon started out strong and became significantly stronger, and so certainly, from our perspective, that's where you really have to focus. Make sure you have a clear cut and strong strategy. Walmart continues to grow at a fast pace with their online business and is doing it very effectively. Target as well, and frankly, I think we feel that these numbers might be a little bit understated for Target. They had a tremendous year growing their electronic sales through Target.com. Tremendous year, and they were very, very effective with buy online, pick up in store.
Go ahead. Not to interrupt you again.
No, it's okay.
What do you think about Kroger? I know in 2020 they announced that they were looking at a marketplace-like launch as well. Do you think that they're going to have an even bigger year than they did last year if they can really kind of hit that outright?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think with a lot of the players like that, especially when you're looking at it from an electronics perspective, it depends a lot on how effective and efficient they are with their buy online, pick up in store, and especially someone like Kroger, where it's a food retailer that is going to get regular weekly traffic. If you can leverage that and make that whole BOPIS experience effective and easy for the consumer, then they have a real potential to start adding on adjacent categories or even non-adjacent categories.
Yeah, because Kroger really isn't synonymous with electronics. They're a grocery store, but being that it is kind of that necessity, like you said, customers are going to be there every week. So why not just lump in a new TV or whatever it is they're looking for with their grocery order and just kind of add it to the list?
Yeah, and I think what we're going to see is a land grab of sorts for all of these brick and mortar players that are trying to continue to get better and better at being omni-channel and providing a BOPIS experience that's effective. And I think we'll have to wait and see. Some of them are going to do it effectively, and they'll be able to leverage the regular traffic. And again, someone like Kroger, someone like Walmart, Target, where they have weekly grocery traffic, they've got a leg up. Costco's the same way. They've got a leg up because they always are going to have people coming into the store, and therefore it's just more convenient to order a product and pick it up because you're going in there. But that said, the Home Depots of the world, the Best Buys of the world, they still have a role to play. They're still going to be very strong. I think it's going to be a really fascinating year to see how each of them adapts their businesses to the new normal.
Absolutely.
All right, we can probably move on.
So kind of like what you said, Ed, the market as a whole is growing. E-commerce as a whole is growing. I think the stat was e-commerce as a whole grew by over 40% in 2020, and Amazon still kind of leads that that overall rush. They saw a huge increase in new Prime memberships, almost double what they saw a year before, and they can kind of continue to see that, and it's based on that necessity of not needing to, or necessity and accessibility, I should say, of not being able to go in store at the beginning of the year and building that habit of not having to now. So we saw that huge growth, plus the growth of Walmart and like you said, Target and Best Buy, all these other pieces that are seeing double what they were before because of that huge growth. What I always find interesting with Amazon specifically is kind of that common theme that as Amazon grows, it becomes more difficult for the brand for brands or for retailers to work with. They really only track the end consumer as their customer, and so they continually do whatever it takes to, one, offer the consumer the number one opportunity and kind of work their bottom line as much as possible. And we saw that definitely happen in 2020 as well, with Amazon restricting a lot of FBA inventory from Seller Central, and I'm sure on Vendor Central as well, for essential products, for PPE products, things like that, really forcing sellers and brands to pivot what they did, either become much more conservative and much more efficient with their logistics for FBA, or building a direct-to-consumer model, or implementing a direct-to-consumer model, I should say, where they're shipping product direct to the end consumer, or even layering the two together. That's what we at Caspian did a lot of, is really kind of backing up the two, allowing us to kind of utilize best of both worlds. But on top of that, on the Vendor Central side, we also saw a ton of Amazon's initiative towards automation, and really looking at them continue a lot of those initiatives they had before COVID hit, and really continually making it more difficult to really master that marketplace on either the Seller Central side or the Vendor Central side for brands. Really are targeting that for major growth. And there's not a ton of information here, but I actually think there's so much information here because it shows a couple of things, especially those last two. And I wanted to ask you a question, Ed. Based on these last two pieces and the troubles that brands have with, one, keeping stock in Amazon, and two, really being able to optimize the channel, do you think those kind of issues are what's driving additional traffic towards places like Walmart, Target, Best Buy? Because if you can't find it on Amazon, you're going to go find it somewhere else, right?
Yeah, I think to some extent you're definitely right, and certainly I think you can see where, if you're a vendor and you're set up on Amazon, but Amazon's restricting your inbound inventory on particular SKUs, which of course they were, and I suspect many people on the call probably experienced it. We definitely did with a number of different clients, and you're sitting there with the same product at Walmart. You may then drive the traffic to Walmart because you're going to be out of stock on Amazon, and so you may shift some of your marketing dollars for digital marketing over to Walmart.com or over to Target.com, because again, you're sitting there with a restriction that it's unfortunate, and it's really just because Amazon was struggling to deal with the huge wave of increased demand over the course of the year. Now, I do think that they are catching up. They will probably catch up, but we're still, I think, in that phase of this sort of new temporary normal where anything's possible. You may, and again, I think we saw, and Adam, I think you and I probably saw on one or two particular clients where sometimes it's hard to predict. you think you're going to get a number that you can, put an order in, and it comes back and you can't. And then sometimes it comes back and you're like, wait a second, now we can ship in twice as much.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, it's a tough situation. I think it will level off over time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be a combination of the two. I think that there's a couple models in there that Amazon implemented that they're going to continue with. Especially around new products. I know we saw heavy restrictions whenever we brought on a new brand or brought on a new product, and I think that Amazon's going to keep that in play just to really force brands to really have everything locked up tight when it comes to launching new products and doing it really efficiently. But as far as the overall growth of things, I agree. I think they're going to get back to some of the stuff that they were doing beforehand and really open it up to a lot of the right sellers.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, we can move into the next one. So drilling down even a little further into the consumer electronics category as a whole, we look at a couple different pieces here, and I'm going to jump around on these bullet points because I think it flows a little better. So the electronics category as a whole is probably one of the most mature and largest categories on Amazon. It continually pushes both the strategy and what can be done on this, to the point where we're seeing huge growth not only on the channel as a whole, but in subcategories. There's subcategories out there like headphones that is actually larger than some of the full size categories that are out there on the channel. And Amazon continues to kind of drill down those subcategories to be more and more specific to the brand or specific to the product for that end consumer, which is good and bad because it's hard to kind of tell how great a product is if you can only see it in one lens. But we continue to kind of do that. As that's happening, Amazon is continuing to own less of the overall market share when it comes to listings, but still producing a ton of the sales. And what that really tells me, and Ed, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, is that Amazon's really kind of tearing towards those top tier brands and those volume moved products and producing their own lines and really trying to own a huge chunk of the business, but using a very small amount of that market to do so.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think what has struck me about this graph every time I've seen it this week is if you were to ask Amazon, 2 or 3 years ago, what should it look like? This is probably what they were coming up with, as they kind of went through that transition of pushing certain vendors to 3P and forcing other vendors who were maybe both 1P and 3P to only 1P. And it is again, it's making sure that they can narrow the number of actively managed 1P first party vendors they have, and then complement that with and really prioritize their brands within 1P, but at the same time then have thousands and thousands of third party sellers so that they're always able to maintain that we have the greatest selection possible
Absolutely.
for the consumer.
Yeah, do you think that the consumer electronics category really is kind of that, I'm going to say testing ground, but I don't necessarily mean that, but that indicator of what the channel will look like across all categories eventually, where Amazon really is pushing the third-party sales and really owning that very small sliver of listings that produces all those sales, and really that is what they're going to implement across the board over time. But it really is usually electronics is one of the first places it happens for those things that they kind of grow across.
Yeah, I do think so, because you think about it, and I think you had a bullet on one of the earlier slides about increased or it might be later, sorry, increased automation on 1P, where it's if they're going to have a vendor relationship, a true vendor buyer relationship, that takes time, it takes resource, and the more of those they have, the harder it is for them to scale that side of the business. So it's better if they can reduce that to just the ones that are big enough for it to matter. and then have more of the automated system on the 3P side. Now, of course, they do have to balance that so that ultimately they still have a desire to to get marketing money from you to be as profitable as possible on particular brands. So I think it's always that fine line between whether they want a brand that grows and gets to a certain size to be 3P or 1P. But from an overall perspective, yeah, I can't imagine it would go in a different direction than what we're seeing here with this little 4% sliver.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only place that it really could kind of change those in the opposite direction is, I think the old adage is Amazon Vendor Central specifically is a necessary evil, if you will. Amazon's end goal has always been to have the cheapest price online to drive as much traffic to the platform as possible. And Vendor Central is really the place that they have that control over other places. So that's really the only reason why I would think that there could be some growth there. But I agree. I think overall for their strategy, it's going to look similar to this graph across the board. Oh, I wasn't done yet. Could you go back, please? Thank you. And then talking about larger brands, one thing we really saw, and I'm sure this was kind of just pieces to what we were talking about as far as COVID and having to redirect marketing dollars other places to where there was inventory. We saw a lot of the top tier brands really start to become more defensive in their marketing and really own the spaces that that were branded. So branded keywords, stuff like that, and allowing for a lot more of those smaller brands to be more aggressive in marketing and spend a little more to effectively grow their market share in some of those key places. Like if you, for example, if you search speaker, the likelihood of you seeing some of those bigger brand names like Sony or Samsung is pretty low. You'll actually see a lot of brands you don't recognize because they're willing to kind of attack those more generic keywords more aggressively than what the top tier brands are doing. And I think I agree completely with your statement earlier that it really was an indicator that they were tiering those dollars into another place and focusing to where the inventory or the opportunity was for them at that time. So I would assume that it's not going to continue that way, that they're going to kind of refocus a lot of that money towards the marketplaces again. But it really allowed for that opportunity gap for those smaller mid-range brands to kind of get in there. And then one other piece that I've noticed over the years, really not just 2020, is those larger brands aren't always the best at pivoting. So it can take them a while to do those restructuring of spend or to take on new approaches. So things like sponsored videos that are new and that are newer, I should say, are still not being utilized by those larger tier brands, and it's one of those places where those smaller brands continue to gain ground on them because of it. And a lot of those mid-tier smaller brands are the direct-to-consumer manufacturers out of China, out of other countries, and they've become a lot more aggressive in what they're doing and how they're targeting brands and how they're targeting their competitors, both on a price point level and on the marketing level. So when you're searching for a specific product, you're finding 10 of these direct consumer manufacturers that are priced $1 cheaper than the product you're actually looking for, with all the right saying all the right things, and really kind of focusing on visibility and convincing the consumer through a price point opportunity.
Yeah, and just to chime in on that one, we saw that across the board, where you saw just increasingly aggressive behavior in terms of competitive brand targeting, where some of the direct-to-consumer brands would be targeting a specific brand or multiple specific brands and just hammering them with search ads, on Amazon. The other thing we find with a lot of those companies is, one, they're often only selling directly and through Amazon. So they have a much more consolidated channel. They don't have to worry as much about, being aggressive with their promotional pricing here and there because they're not protecting any other part of the channel. And two, they frequently are, we'll say, very effective at generating product reviews. not always in ways I suspect that qualify and adhere to the terms of service, but nonetheless, you will tend to see, aggressive digital marketing, aggressive pricing, and many product reviews.
Absolutely, and it's no secret that reviews are kind of king when it comes to Amazon and sales,
Yeah.
and recurring sales. Have you seen much issues with brands targeting competitors with negative reviews? I know I've seen that a lot in the past, but I don't know if I've heard it much recently.
I have not seen much of that recently, no.
Yeah, but I agree. I think that we'll see a brand kind of launch, and within like a month or two, they'll have thousands of reviews, and it's always interesting to kind of hear what the model is to get there, because it's usually less than what Amazon thinks is an ideal opportunity as far as getting a customer review.
Right, and it's risky, but then what you also see is they'll take the risk, and if it doesn't work out, they will rebrand and come back, in
Yeah,
another
exactly.
form.
That's a great point. Yeah, all else fails, we still have the product, and it's all YouTube products, so they can just slap another logo on it, another branding, and try again. Absolutely, that's a great point.
Right.
And then lastly, and this is kind of always that continuing theme that, especially with electronics, is regulations, certifications. Those are always going to be a major piece of the puzzle. I'm not going to go through this entire piece, but I think it's worth always mentioning that not all of the certifications that are required for Amazon are actually things that are required by US law. And what Amazon really does is they look at the entire picture, the entire landscape of who they're selling to and where they're selling to, and say, if one area, one region, one city has that requirement, or there's a safety concern, they will just require it across the board. So I know a lot of brands always look at what Amazon's requiring and say, gosh, it's so intense, everything they want. It's going to be so costly to make this happen. And I don't even know if my product's going to sell well on Amazon yet. And that's why. It's because they're looking to control what you can sell on their channel rather than who they have to sell to at the end consumer. As we've seen so far, the customers are there, so it's definitely worth doing and worth getting the appropriate certifications so you can sell on Amazon. It just can be a little tricky to do it because of the overarching theme with how they look at those gatings.
All right, I think we can.
Yeah, we can move on to the next.
Going.
So we've looked at the industry, and now we want to look at kind of how consumer behavior had affected that industry, how we kind of got to that point, and I'll let Ed kind of cover some of that.
Thank you. All right, I'll just rip through some of these. I want to make sure we have some time for questions at the end. So again, you saw this shift in consumer behavior. You also saw a shift where you really end up with two sets of consumers. Unfortunately, you had a big set that was either temporarily or for the entire year without a job. And those folks, obviously, they're not spending much at all. They're spending on food. They're spending on the basics, and that's it. Certainly not much at all on consumer technology. The other set, the consumers who did stay employed, actually saw their disposable income increase for a number of the reasons that we list here, where you're not going on vacations, you're not sending kids to summer camps, you're cutting down on clothing purchases, you're not going out for meals, all sorts of things like this that end up driving up over time the disposable income you have, along with for many people the stimulus payments. And that was really the driver in that tremendous growth in overall consumer tech spending. And so, again, just quoting an NPD number very recently released, they looked at it as 17% growth year over year. 17%, which, if you follow the consumer technology market, it's not like that ever. 17%. It kills me that it was that much in 2020. It's amazing. And we are still very bullish about 2021. We think that's still going to come in the, say 12 to 18% range. Maybe it'll be a little bit lower as a percentage, just because again you're fighting against very high comparables in 2020, but it continues to grow, and it continues to grow fast.
Yeah, and I know you're going to talk about this in the next slide, but it's so true. I personally, gosh, I upgraded so many different things because like, especially when it comes to working from home, because I had to look at it all the time, and it was about a comfort level, and it was about what could I do to keep me home longer or be entertained while there on an electronics level, more than anything, it seemed. So it's a surprisingly big number, but it's also not that surprising.
Right. All right, let's move to the next one. And so the other big change is, what does a typical shopping trip look like? People weren't going out shopping as much, particularly in the beginning. And by the beginning, I mean in February, March, April, May timeframe. There was obviously a lot of justified concern about spread and about going out, being out in stores where there's a lot of people. And so what happens is shopping trips evolved into buying trips, and consumers were less concerned about having a lot of choices in store. It really came down to stock. If there was inventory, more often than not, people were going to buy, because one, they were out, and every trip becomes a special trip to get out to the store. And two, because of some of the panic buying of certain things, and also because over the course of the year, you did see in all sorts of different categories, you saw inventory shortages. Consumers developed more of, I think of it akin to the Costco or Sam's Club treasure hunt mentality, where if it's there, I better get it. And they did. And so the result is, for those in-store traffic visits, you saw much higher conversion rates. Consumers were not browsing as much. When they went out to shop, they really went out to buy. I think we can go to the next one. And it was everything revolving around the home, and we talked about this a little bit on the previous slide. So first and foremost, it's a big focus on the basics: food, home goods, home entertainment, those things that allow you to live at home comfortably, work at home comfortably, and ultimately be entertained at home. All of those product categories that revolve around the home did well. And we expect them to continue to do well this year.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. We saw a huge jump in electronics, and specific in those places that you mentioned before. And the only one I would probably add is home security as well. I think that there is, especially around the holidays, when we're looking at, like, what is it called, the porch pirates, and really being able to feel safe in the place where you have to spend even more of your time now. There's big spikes there as well. And a great example of that was Prime Day. The 8 out of the top 10 products that were sold on that day, volume-wise, were all electronics products. And I think actually one of the bigger pieces to that really is worth talking about, it's not on here, is looking back to 2019, the number one selling product was an Instapot for $50. And then you compare that to the top couple of products that were sold in 2020, and we're looking at AirPods for $100 and a Bose soundbar for $150. And so that price point, even, and what people are willing to spend on leisure products has doubled, if not tripled, just in what people are willing to buy in volumes. And we kind of saw that across the board, that those price points continue to grow on an average base, because there's a lot of that discretionary income is more available. So consumer behavior, industry landscape over 2020, and how did that really impact what we do as a whole and what we're looking at both in the past and kind of looking to the future?
Yeah, so I think it's there are several pieces to this, but one, you look at that top bullet, store traffic is just down. So again, retailers have had to adapt their behavior in order to drive the revenue numbers off of a much lower overall traffic number. It's improving, but certainly the whole buy online, pick up in store has been a critical success factor for the ones that have done it well and that are continuing to do it well. Because otherwise, you're seeing, unless they're selling food, you're seeing a lot of stores where they weren't getting traffic, and of course, in many cases, they had to close down for traffic for a while. I think the other big thing is, again, because you have just the massive consumers that have been forced into online buying and or have been encouraged to increase their already healthy online buying behavior. The world we live in now includes an expectation that all products can be researched online and they will have a large number of reviews, can be checked for availability online with a timing in terms of when it will be available, can certainly be ordered online, paid with credit card or with financing if it's a bigger purchase, can be arranged for delivery or pickup, and it can also be arranged for installation with clear installation windows online. That has gone from being a nice thing to offer if you're a retailer or you're a pure play e-tailer, a nice thing to offer, to being this is consumer expectation today.
Absolutely. Do you think that expectations will grow around the ability to return product?
Yeah, I do, and I think if you look at the accounts that have done well, and you go back to that top 10 list, the ones at the top make it pretty easy to return product, and that's not going in the other direction. It's a consumer expectation.
Yeah, and I thought one of the most interesting moves in 2020, I thought, around returns was Walmart announced a partnership with FedEx to pick up product from customers at their houses instead of forcing them to go in store. So even though the buy in store the buy online pick up in store model is really growing, Walmart's still trying to build models around how to return it most efficiently.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the couple of other things that I saw were, one, the trying to drive excitement and sales around Prime Day, and then around Black Friday and Cyber Monday, that time period, everybody was extending the return window out to January 31st.
Yeah, at least a month, really.
Yeah, and of course, and Amazon's been doing this for a while now, but it is effective. Is the going to the Kohl's drop off for returns. I think it has been a very successful thing for them, and certainly it works well for Kohl's. They can, they provide a little coupon every time you drop it off. There's a lot there to, again, sort of creating these new consumer habits.
Absolutely.
All right, we can probably go to the next one. There we go. So here's the other thing that was kind of interesting for us, working with our clients and talking to just people we know in the industry. You saw this dynamic where every retailer was coming back to their vendors and saying, "Hey, our costs are going up. We're having to ship all these products. We need more from you." And only a few vendors could actually make the argument that, yeah, but your other costs have gone down. Whereas for the most part, people had to pony up a little bit and help them out in that time period. But I think from a vendor perspective, where you're really getting into both short and long-term strategy is now is the time to kind of look at how are you spending your money, and how can you start shifting some of those funds to, from in-store things that are not doing as well as you would like over into, some of the online, increasing your digital marketing budget, increasing the way that you're driving traffic to the retailer sites, increasing your presence on their sites, and making sure that you're really getting the most out of your spend. I think, the other thing is, you've seen an increased pivot, of course, for most vendors to Amazon, which had already been happening, but also an increased pivot. I have to say, I mean, for a lot of our clients, taking a lot more notice of and putting a lot more effort into Walmart.com, Target.com, and the others that are moving up that list and starting to take share and provide a really viable online alternative to Amazon. And then I think the final point is, the 1P brands. Oh no, we're still on that slide. We certainly saw some 1P brands, and again, part of this was an inventory management and diversification approach, where they worked to diversify their presence on Amazon by leveraging third-party partnerships. So they might use another reseller to act as a third-party presence for them, so that if they're out of stock in a particular product, they can immediately see that buy box shift over to their own, controlled or favored reseller.
Yeah, and I think that's a great one to highlight. Looking at Amazon's algorithms, looking at what they kind of do to brands as a whole, we saw a lot of pivots there, not only because of limitations when it came to inventory, but also because Amazon was forced to compete even more on the online channel as those other, as the Targets and the Walmarts and the Best Buy start to grow in what they're doing and even becoming more aggressive. Amazon is truly more reactionary than they are proactive. So they continually drop price to compete with other brands. So if brands have are doing promos online with other major players, Amazon's going to see that, and it impacts what they're doing with those brands. And so we saw a lot of that pivot to help kind of stem some of those reactive measures that Amazon would do, as well as produce longevity with a lot of brands, not allowing them to products to crap out as easily, or again, just be able to have more options for the consumer.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
And as Amazon continues to drive traffic to retail, it's a common theme for them that they look at disrupting channels to continue to drive consumers that aren't necessarily looking at Amazon as a retail option, and take over those different industries. I think in 2020 there was at least 3 different new initiatives that were major, and really were designed to disrupt new industries and push traffic back towards Amazon, which incrementally affects their retail side and that platform. They launched their online pharmacy. They launched it's more gated. They launched a luxury retail platform. And one of the cooler ones I thought that they launched that didn't get really a lot of visibility was they launched Amazon Explore, which is kind of a cross between their virtual education or the virtual education industry, as well as trying to tailor towards people who didn't get the opportunity to travel like they wanted to. And it's done right in right on the platform, so you can learn about. I think the one I looked at was you can learn about sake from someone in a Japanese bar, and that's going to drive interest. It drives all these things, and then people can go and buy like a sake glass. It's really interesting the things that they're doing to disrupt completely unrelated industries and drive more business towards their retail business as a whole. So retailers will need to put major attention on the few things that they have a competitive advantage on, to really kind of take that initiative. So that in-store piece, the buy online, pickup
Yeah,
and store, those competitive and pieces that they have over Amazon still.
yeah, that's exactly it. And again, as we've been hammering this point the whole call, it's the retailers that can really leverage that can do a good job of making sure the online customer experience is excellent, and that it flows very nicely into a delivery or buy online, pick up in store. They're going to thrive in this new world. The ones that don't, they're going to struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of a question on that on the
Hmm.
Amazon side, as that competitive advantage is obviously is appealing to consumers, and we're seeing that growth. How fast do you think Amazon's going to scale like Whole Foods or the Kohl's business, or even I know there's rumors out there of even purchasing Kohl's or Macy's and really try to take on that side of the market as well? Or is it really like Amazon kind of sees that as just kind of an initial piece or a side piece to their overall business? Do you think they're going to take a real stance in there?
So yeah, I mean, I think they've taken a stance. How fast they grow it is really still up in the air. I mean, they, to their credit, and this is a good mantra for just doing business on Amazon in general. They're testing. They're testing lots of different things. You have, your Amazon pickup points and Amazon stores and Kohl's and Whole Foods. I think I would have expected there to be a little more acceleration of the physical presence. But to be fair, I mean, it's not like that was going to happen this past year.
Yeah, true.
Um, but I do think there's opportunity to have more of a presence in Kohl's, and now whether they would buy Kohl's or not, yeah, I don't know. I think to do that, then you're really looking at, okay, why do we think we're going to do a better job of making this a destination that will drive traffic, as opposed to how are we going to leverage the traffic that's already coming in here?
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, and in a lot of ways, that's the mentality they have for Amazon
Mhm.
as a whole. They've already announced a good amount of intentions around continuing to make Amazon an experiential retail location rather than just a transactional one. And you can see it even more. And so brands have to pay more attention to content. We know that SEO and that inorganic and organic traction that comes from those things is what drives visibility. But also, once you have that customer at that listing, you need to have that experience that not only shows a customer what they're buying, how to use it,
Mhm.
but how much better it is than the competitor that they can click on 2 clicks away, right? So it's all about really continuing to build that experience and that discoverability for every individual brands. And now we have to lump in the diversification of logistics and making sure that products not only are in stock but stay in stock.
Right, right. Okay,
So where to go in 2021?
exactly. So I think we've hit a lot of these points, and again, it's really about thinking about where the market is, where it's headed now. Where if you haven't been paying attention, then shame on you. But it's an online world, and so how you adapt to that, how you manage your strategy in terms of marketing and program dollars, and even the accounts that are going to do well with you is going to be critical. Um, I think, as we've said a couple of times, the national accounts that can deliver on their e-commerce solutions are going to do well. They're going to thrive in the environment, and the ones that can't will not. I think the big thing we also noticed over the last year was just new opportunities where a lot of accounts that we talk to on a regular basis are much more open to adding categories online, much more aggressively interested in adding categories online, adding good products online, and trying to expand what they're doing as quickly as possible, so that they can compete in this new normal. And that represents an opportunity. for everyone. Maybe you didn't think your product was going to be right for, a HomeDepot.com or Lowe's.com or one of those type of accounts, and suddenly, they want it. They want new products that you didn't think that they were going to want. So you need to keep a very open mind when it comes to where should your product sell, and then beyond that, once you do that and you get those products there, you need to make sure that you're doing the things that will make that successful and make those products move off of those sites. Otherwise, you're just creating a channel pricing problem for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. What we've seen over the last 2020 and moving forward is everyone wants to be the one-stop shop. Everyone wants to drive all that traffic to themselves. So it doesn't matter if your brand was synonymous with a product anymore. You want to be synonymous with being able to buy any product you need going forward and figuring out those pieces. But 100%, I agree completely, is as you scale, if you're not truly protecting your brand, price point wise, branding wise, all you're doing is creating a mess that will impact all aspects of your business. One of the truths of online business in general is everything is one click away, right? So if you're trying to sell something for cheaper in one place, it is very easy for customers and other platforms to find that, and it disrupts all other business that's happening on the channel. It's not nearly as easy to look at those kind of strategies as it was once, when everyone was just in store and you could run these different promos in different locations and everything worked out fine.
Yeah, it really highlights to me the need to own the whole process of being the online merchant, because most of these sites, again, they're adding categories. It's getting busier, it's getting noisier. You have to be excellent at the digital marketing piece. You have to be excellent at managing the pricing. You have to be excellent at doing everything, making data-driven decisions on pricing, on marketing, on messaging. And that's all, sort of classic digital marketing, online merchandising, that the vendor has to really own that at this point. You don't have this landscape where you have many, curated mixes of product outside of like a Costco, where they're going to limit what they have in categories. And so as a result, you have to be very good at all of the blocking and tackling when it comes to online marketing and online sales, and then apply that to all of these platforms that your products are on.
Absolutely. I think, and just to add to that with a minor tangent, I think one place that we're going to see a lot of growth strategy-wise is distribution. It's become overly apparent for a lot of brands that if you don't have a strong distribution model, if you don't have trusted partners and the right contracts and agreements in place, your online channel will continue just to be a mess, because anyone can access your products. So I really see that being one place that's really going to get locked up tight on a strategy-wise for a lot of brands, so that they can really have even more control and even more accessibility of their products to the consumer.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think if we jump to the next slide, I just want to make a quick point on, if you are, in stores, you need to be aware, and you've probably already been hit by this or seen this happening, that the nature of how retailers are using their stores is changing. In all cases, they're cutting SKU counts to free up some space, and for many of them, using that space to fulfill, hold inventory and fulfill the buy online, pick up in store. So while the online mixes get bigger, the in-store mixes are getting smaller, and they're certainly under the microscope.
Yeah, I think that Walmart really kind of showed this model over the last couple of years really well, that their .com became a real testing ground for entire brands, and then they can kind of pick and choose and really curate what goes in store based on what's selling really well.
Yeah.
So based on those pieces, what do we do with it? How do brands remain competitive on the channel? And really, this is kind of these are all kind of pieces that are not only specific to Amazon, but really across the board. It's about creating a universal brand. It's about using the right keywords, enhanced bullet points that are really bringing customers in and explaining what the product is, how to use it, and really kind of making sure that a listing is an extension of a brand, or like a brand's website is a good way of putting it. You want this to be as elaborate and as engaging and as experiential as your own platform is, because that is what a customer is looking for. They want to know everything about it. They want to know how to use it. They want to know who's using it, and they want to be able to find it. So it's all about kind of building that ecosystem, if you will, across all these different platforms, across social media, influencers, and really building that. I think Katie's on here, and I always take this saying from her. It's about creating the halo effect of seeing these products everywhere and being able to research them and really see the branding of the things you want to purchase.
Yeah, Adam, this is so important. As you see, every category has more and more entrants and more noise that you have to get above. Branding and telling a story becomes so much more important, because you're trying to capture the attention of consumers that are overwhelmed with, they'll do a search on Amazon for, your product category, and what are they going to see? They're going to see, 10 different brands they've never heard of before.
Mm.
So how do you make sure you stand out? How do you make sure your story resonates with them? How do you pull them in? And then again, that consistency you mentioned across, your own website versus what's on Amazon versus what's on, say, Walmart.com or BestBuy.com. All those pieces are really critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought 2020 was a great example, especially while we were talking about logistics and where products were and where they were sold out. Is people are still going to start at Amazon right now. That's where the majority of the customer is, but that doesn't mean that's where they're going to purchase the product. But they are going to research it. They are going to read the reviews. They're going to look at social media. They're going to look at those websites and possibly purchase it somewhere else. But if they go to, say, I don't know, like Walmart, and that branding isn't there, we continue to talk about things like counterfeits or faulty products. If brands aren't overly concerned with what that presentation looks like, a customer will be, and they will skip over and go 2 more clicks to the next website and find that product somewhere else where they do think they can trust that presentation. Awesome.
Great, guys. That is our last slide. So we are out of time. We didn't get a ton of questions in the Q&A, so I'm fine ending this now. If you do have any questions, feel free to get in contact with us on our website. But thank you all for joining us. This will be sent out by end of day to you all, the recording and the slides. And please get in touch with any further questions. Thank you, Adam and Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Right. Bye, guys.